Italian is really the language where I have, like, it's more predominant in me, and I feel like you see the actual me when I speak Italian. But now that I live in Montreal, I actually use English, Bengali-Italian, and French pretty much equally. Seeing it was so beautiful. And when we took this tour, they also brought us to the Mayan villages, which I felt it was probably the best experience. So during the week, a mixture of both, and then on the weekend it was strictly like for lunch it was like, let's say, Bengali food, and in the evening it had to be like Italian food, either pizza or pasta. I would just say to people, travel as much as you can, eat as much as you can when you go to different places. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. So always try to adapt yourself to the local standards and to get the most experience out of it.
Welcome to the Winging It Travel podcast with me, James Hammond, where every Monday I'll be joined by guests to talk about their travel stories, travel tips, backpacking advice, and so much more. Right now, I'm taking the podcast on the road travelling with me, so tune in every week for short form episodes detailing all my travels alongside my Monday guest episode. Are you a backpacker, traveller, gap year student, or simply someone who loves to travel? Then this is the podcast for you. This is a casual, informative podcast designed for you to inspire you to travel. There'll be stories to tell, tips to share, and experiences to inspire. Welcome to the show. Let's get into the episode. Hello and welcome to this week's episode where I'm joined by Urmi Hossain, who is a blogger, self-published author, YouTuber, speaker, and mentor. Urmi works in the finance sector and helps empower women within that sphere and beyond, which is super cool. Today we're going to talk about all those things and Urmi's travels to Bangladesh, Malta, Mexico, and the Dominican Republic. So Urmi, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Good, you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Where in the world are you based right now?
In Montreal, Canada.
Not too far from me, just down the road. How is Montreal these days?
Not too sure. We have a very weird summer, I feel like, because we usually used to have very hot summer, but I feel like because of the changes with the weather this year, it's a bit funny. We do have very strong rainy days, and it did rain yesterday to the point that sometimes we even lose electricity because it rains so much. Wow. We had a few months of very hot days, and now it's like gloomy today. So it's a little bit of like different things happening. Yeah.
Strange, because we have had really good weather on our road trip so far until we got to Quebec province and it's just gone to rain.
Exactly, you see?
It's like even a little bit cold.
Yes, it's a little bit cold too. That's another thing, which is like not normal, because usually when we start wearing jackets and something a little bit heavier towards end of September, and even September sometimes it's warm, but I feel like already it's like the moment August came, we were already like wearing heavy things because it gets really cold in the morning sometimes.
Strangest thing, can't work it out.
Exactly.
Yeah. Unreal. Okay, and let's kick off with some early travels. And then we're going to your current travels. First off, where did you grow up and what was travel like as part of your upbringing?
I basically grew up in Italy. This is where I was born. Basically, the whole story is that my parents, they are both from Bangladesh. They got married and then they decided to move to Italy. So they moved to Sicily, and then that's where I was born. And since I was a kid, we used to travel. But the only reason we would travel, it was because they wanted me to know their culture. So they would bring me to Bangladesh to see what life was like, to meet like distant relatives, to meet relatives, to get to know a little bit about the culture and so forth. So when I was a kid, I used to go a couple of times to Bangladesh, and then we used to travel within Italy. So we moved from Sicily, we moved to the north, and once we moved to the north, we visited a couple of places in the northern part of Italy. So we went to Venice, we went to Como. I used to live in Milan when I was in the northern part. We went to Switzerland, and since we were in the north and it was closer to other places nearby, we also went to England. So we basically took time to visit parts of Italy. And then, of course, because they wanted me to know more about their culture and stuff like that, then they brought me to Bangladesh a couple of times.
Oh, wow. Got a few questions about that, actually. So, Italy, why there? Quite interestingly, because, okay, from a basic standpoint, a lot of Bangladeshis, they go to England because there's a slight mutual language thing there, right? With the English. But Italy is an interesting choice.
And yeah, so basically what happened is back in the 80s and the 90s when my parents got married and they moved. So they had some options in mind. One of them was Italy, one of them was England. And I don't know why they just decided to choose Italy. And I think also it was a bit easier to immigrate to Italy back in the days. So they moved to Sicily, so the immigration process was slightly easier. With that said, my parents don't live anymore in Italy. They actually live in UK now.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So what happened is there was a big inflow of immigration back in the days. And then I would say around 2010, what happened is a lot of Bengali immigrants, they moved to UK. So basically those that were living in Italy, they moved to UK because like you said, there's this huge community of Bengali people in England. But this year I went back to Italy and I was in Rome and I noticed that there's still a big immigrant Bengali community there. And I was actually watching a documentary about it, and they said that during like the last 3 years, there was a big flow of immigration flow of people moving from Bangladesh to Italy. Like they were all moving to Rome. They have some moving in other parts of Europe, like Spain and Portugal. And I think they just like opened some like application for people to move and make it easier for them. So things have changed, but they're still the same in a way, because people somehow they go all through Italy when it comes to moving somewhere.
Yeah, I think the 80s were probably a difficult time to go to UK. It wasn't a good time to be,
Probably,
especially early 80s. But I think it got better towards the end. I was born in the 80s, I don't really know, but I think from what my parents said, it's quite a tough time. But did your parents speak Italian when they moved?
No.
Oh, wow.
No, none of them spoke Italian. So what happened is my dad decided to speak Italian. So basically this is what he tells me, is that he's probably one of the first few people that first moved to Italy. And then what happened is he decided to learn the language. And then from there, what happened is there was like other people moving from Bangladesh, and people would go to him when he was like, oh, I need to like fill out the paper, but I don't know what it means. So they would all go to him for like translating things.
Yeah.
So he was very well known in the community. And then in the meantime, my mom, she never actually took classes to learn. She would just pick some words based on what she would watch on TV.
Yeah.
Or I remember even at the beginning, she would just use like she would just gesture things when she wanted to buy things. And then when I started to go to school and learn the language, then she would just use me as like the translator, basically.
Got it. Okay. They now live in the UK. So whereabouts do they live there?
They live in London.
London. Okay, cool. Cool. Yeah, there's a big Bengali community there. That's cool.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I used to live quite near Southall in the west, and that's like
I know
that's a real
Southall.
good hub. Yeah, it's a good hub for like great food and stuff like that in that community.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And where does Montreal and Canada come into it for you?
It comes for personal reasons. So yeah, I moved for personal reasons, and then I did my university here, and now I've been living here for a long time, and I work in the financial sector.
And you're a fully fledged Canadian passport holder?
I am actually. I am Canadian by law. Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. That's what we're going for next year.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, get that passport. Nice. That's great. So you got like a mix of Bengali, Italian. Now you got some Canadian thrown in there, maybe a little English culture in there as well. So a real good mix.
Yeah, because I go back to visit my parents to UK, so there's a British side to it, I would say.
Yeah. That's great. Okay, let's talk about your travels. So you mentioned early travels in Europe because of where you were based in Italy. I actually want to touch on Bangladesh first because obviously it's not a country that's talked about that lot to go and travel to. India gets a lot of spotlight, if you like, next door. But Bangladesh, what are some of the things you think if people are going to Bangladesh should visit and places to check out?
So that's a very good question because I also would like to know myself, because here's the thing. Every time my parents would bring me to Bangladesh, it was never to visit things like touristic attractions.
Okay,
It
like
was
family just,
never, it
yeah,
was never about that. So I feel
right.
like I always miss on that. Um, Mainly they would make us experience the life of a local. So they would like, we would like stay in villages, we would never stay in the city. We would behave like villagers, or I think that's how you say it. We would basically like just stay in the villages and experience that kind of lifestyle.
Right.
And I remember having few culture shock when I went, because it was just everything was just so different.
Mm.
There is a lot of crowd, there is a lot of poverty, there is a lot of nature, and as soon as you walk out from the airport, you see that there's so much like crowd around. Like it's like you have people, you have cars, you have rickshaws all in the same street. No one is following the traffic lights, like no one cares. Then
Yeah.
sometimes you see cows in the middle of the street.
Oh yeah, classic. Yeah.
Classic. So
Yeah.
that was a bit of a shock to me, and I was also shocked to seeing that much poverty, because I was so not used to it. And people actually come up to you and ask you for like money, and you start feeling bad.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I went, because I went 4 times, it was always like, I feel like it has always been that kind of experience. But I also saw there was a little bit of progression in terms of like things that you can do. Like even like I would before, when I would go, I would never go to a restaurant in Bangladesh, but now I feel like they have very good restaurants that you can try. And I spoke to someone who recently went, and I saw some of her stories, and things have changed. Like they have like spas.
Oh.
Yeah, they have like spas. You can go to the beach. They have like actual touristic attraction that you can do. So I feel like I always wanted to see those kind of things, but because as parents, I think you want to teach your kids more about your like culture. We never get to experience that side of our country. So I miss on that in a bit, because they really want us to like meet the family, people that you don't see often, and get connected with them, learn about the culture, learn the language, speak the language. So most of the time it's really like spending time with family and attending those weddings, which are like big and huge
Yeah.
and like long lasting for like 5 days or stuff like that.
Awesome. And can you speak the local language when you go there?
I do,
Yeah.
because that's the language we spoke at home.
Yeah. And how many languages can you speak in total?
4.5.
What's the 0.5?
It's Spanish.
Okay, okay. Yeah, a little bit of
Yeah,
that.
yeah, a little
Okay.
bit of that. English, Bengali, Italian, French.
French. Okay. Which one are you
Yeah,
most comfortable in, do you think?
I would probably say Italian,
Mm.
because that's almost like, I always say Italian is like my adopted mother tongue, even
Yeah.
though Bengali was my actual mother tongue. But I
Mm-hmm.
feel like Italian is really the language where I have, like, it's more predominant in me, and I feel like you see the actual me when I speak Italian.
Mm-hmm.
But now that I live in Montreal, I actually use English, Bengali, Italian, and French pretty much equally, because
Oh, wow.
I work in a French environment.
Yeah.
I speak Italian with a lot of my friends and also my sister. Some of my friends, I speak English and French. So I also speak Bengali with my parents. So I touch a little bit, like I do speak all of them pretty much equally, I would say.
And for Bangladesh, what is like your favorite dish or cuisine that you like tasting there?
I really like the chicken curry.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I like chicken curry that my mom used to make. So it's like a lot of spices together.
Yeah.
And there is this other dish called korma,
Oh, yeah.
which
Korma, yeah.
also which is also very good,
Mm-hmm.
especially the way my mom's makes it, because they usually people use milk, but if
Yeah.
you can also use cream.
Cream.
And when you use cream, it just makes it creamier, and you eat it with basmati rice, but the basmati rice is cooked differently than the regular rice. Like you have to use this special butter, which is called ghee, to cook it. So you're making
Yeah.
pulao. You're
Mm-hmm.
making pulao, so it's pretty good to have kurma with pulao and a little bit of salad. And I think the best thing ever. So I really like that kind of dish. And we also make biryani, which is also like it's rice with like a little bit of vegetables and meat, or you can also use shrimp. So you can either use chicken, beef, or shrimp. And that's also very good when you have like a boiled egg or a curry egg with a little bit of salad.
That's very interesting, because I'm very interested also when you're growing up in Italy. I mean, Italy is routinely named on my podcast as the best cuisine by people. So you have that because you're living in the country, but also you have your parents cooking traditional dishes from Bangladesh. I mean, it's the best of both worlds. But did you always have Bangladeshi food at home, or did your parents try to get you into the Italian food as well?
So here's the thing. If you ask me what's my favorite food, I would tell you it's Italian. I'm big on pasta.
Yeah.
I can breathe pasta and eat pasta every day.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. My parents would always make Bengali food at home. And then there was me complaining and be like, no, I want pasta. So every time I would come from school, I would go into a fight because I would see rice and I would be so upset about it. So I would always tell them I want pasta. So here's the thing. We had a mixture of both. So we had a little bit of Bengali food as well as Italian food.
Dream.
So during the week, I would say I would have a mixture of both. And then on the weekend, it was strictly like for lunch, it was like, let's say Bengali food. And in the evening, it had to be like Italian food, either pizza or pasta. And because then I would get really grumpy. Like I would really get grumpy whenever I would not see pasta. Like if I eat rice straight for 3 days, it was hard on me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Even now it's the same thing. I have to have a mixture of both. And in Bangladesh, this is one thing that you want to know is that when you go to someone's house, they might serve you like pasta with spices. So and I'd like to see it as a combination of Bengali and Italian type of food, because it's like you can have instant noodles or like pastas, and they add eggs, they add meat and some spices and chilies, and then they cook it, and like they cook it in oil, and then they serve it as like a dessert, not a dessert, they serve it as a snack, like a 5 p.m. snack with tea.
Wow.
So that's one thing they do back at home in Bangladesh. So whenever I see that, I always think this is a fusion of like Italian and Bengali together.
Yeah, so which sounds like a dream combo.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's like, if you like a little bit of spicy, that's pretty good, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, and someone also told me that Bangladesh is rising in the coffee scene. There's a few roasteries popping up in Dhaka and Chittagong that are starting to make really good coffee.
Probably yes, but one thing that because I wouldn't know, it's been so long that I have not been there, but one thing that I can definitely say is that in Bangladesh, you can expect to have very good chai. Yeah. Which is like it's like tea with milk, but it's you add so many spices and it just tastes so good. And
love it.
Having chai, it's like a thing. Like in every single, like if you go to a Bengali person's house, that's the first thing they will serve you. Is like, do you want chai? And that's like part of the custom, that's part of the culture, the tradition. And the same thing when you go to Bangladesh, even when you go to a restaurant, they never serve you coffee, they serve you tea. But probably what you're saying about the coffee, it could have changed, that now they have like places for people to have coffee, but I wouldn't know because it's been just way too long that I've not been there.
Yeah, someone who's also from Bangladesh, she told me that. Yeah, she said that this is starting to come into the culture, especially the younger generation, I think.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Okay, we're going to move on to another travel of yours, just next door to Italy, as Malta. And the reason I chose this one is because this is a very interesting country, but they're kind of almost slightly forgotten, I think, to travel in Europe. Even I'm like, oh yeah, Malta's down there. Like, why have I not gone there? But what's your experience of traveling in Malta?
Yeah, I had this travel with I went there in 2019, and I went with my sister and my cousin, and we stayed there for like 3 days, and we were choosing from different destinations. And then we were like, oh, how about Malta? I mean, it's like, it seems interesting, but we were also not too sure about it.
Yeah.
And so when we got there, basically it has a little bit of that, I want to say Italian touch, but not really too much. So people, they speak their own language, and honestly, like it was hard for me to even understand what they were saying. And it's a very small island. Like we did couple of like attraction and main places. Like we went to Valletta, we went to Gaza, I think that's how it's called. And everything is just, you can do this very easily in like a couple of days. You don't need that many days. And we went to the beach, which was very, very nice. I think it's pretty well known for like the beaches that they have. And I don't know if it gets a lot of tourists. That's another thing too, because when we went, yes, we saw some tourists, but not as much. And I don't know why. And I don't know if they live off tourism. That's another thing, because I remember walking there and just wondering, like, where are their offices? Where are their schools? Where are the hospitals? Like, how are people living, in these places? And I remember the day we were leaving, we had to take the bus and it never came. It never came. So we were sort of like panicking, was like, what the hell is, what's going on? Where's the bus? So the bus like never came. We had to take a taxi. And they do have a lot of Italian restaurants. And I think it's because of because Italy is like so close by, I think it's so close by to Sicily. So we did meet some Sicilians when we were there who run Italian restaurants. And I felt I had very authentic Italian food. Like we had cacio e pepe, we had pasta al pesto, and it was very, very delicious. But yeah, like Malta I feel like it's so not well known. Like sometimes we even forget that it's there because it's just so small. It's just so far from everything that, people usually stop to Italy, but they don't go like a bit further to go to Malta, which I still think it's worth visiting because it has a couple of things that you can do. Like we visited, as I said, Valletta. We also took the little, it's like not the boat, but we took like the little, the ferry to go from one side of the island to go to the other side. We also took a little boat and we went inside like caves, and they have really nice, beautiful beaches. Like it's crystal clear. The only downside is that it has jellyfish. So they make you always aware that be careful when you go to the water, because they do have jellyfishes. That's the only thing. And it's really hot. It's very hot in Malta.
Okay, yeah, it's always kind of been on my radar, but never really got an opportunity to go there. And I imagine maybe like as a winter break in the Northern Hemisphere, it must be fairly mild in the winter, right? If you want a bit of sun.
Exactly, because I grew up in Sicily, and since Sicily is not that far from Malta, like it would never get really cold in Sicily. Like what's our winter like? It's like 15 probably, which is still like really nice compared to Canada. And I think it's the same thing in Malta too. Like you have fairly mild winters, and I wouldn't even call the winters probably like more like spring, I would say. And so it's a good destination, but I feel like it's one of those places that you would like to just visit once in your life, but you would not like to go back. That's how I feel about it.
Right. And I do know that their national dish is rabbit stew. Did you have some of that?
No, I did not, because we had no clue what was the national dish.
Okay.
So and because my cousin and my sister, we were all born in Italy, we were just craving Italian food the whole time.
I'm sure it's not a bad place to get Italian food. As you say, it's right next door. So
yeah, exactly, it's not that
decent.
Bad.
Yeah, I also think it was one of the heaviest bombed places in World War II. I think, if not the heaviest bombed, I believe. So, because it was a British colony and it was a British outpost, and obviously it sat in that awkward area of Italy being obviously with Germany at the time, and we're in North Africa, like it's in that middle bit, right? So I think it's fought over quite a bit, unfortunately. But yeah, and I have like one roundabout or something. I think there's like another random fact. I think I remember.
They do have a roundabout. I remember seeing it.
I think it's like one. I think it might be the only one. There might be more now. I'm not sure, but I think that's a fact from the past as well.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Interesting place. Yeah, I think I want to go and just check out Valletta and then around the island, I think. Yeah.
And
the Maltese language, I think, is a mix, isn't it, of everything?
Yes, it's a mix of everything. It was like different.
Yeah. So it's great. It's got its own culture. That's great. Yeah, I need to check that out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to another country, the Dominican Republic. So we're switching the other side of the world a little bit to the Caribbean. When did you go there? And my actual question with Dominican Republic is kind of known as like a honeymoon resorty place. But did you feel like you could travel on the island without doing that?
That's the thing. I went last year, and I just sticked to a resort.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, because like I got this package deal where you could just have this experience for 5 days in a resort, and that's where we stayed. And it was again with my sister. And because we were two girls traveling, there was a little bit of like, that worry that, if you get out of like the resort, things might
Right.
happen. We do not speak the language. And prior to going there, I went to Mexico. So when I went to Punta Cana, I basically stayed in a resort, and I had a little bit of like experience of like how locals lived. And I
Mm-hmm.
really feel like it is a very poor country, because we had at some point some local vendors coming inside the resort who were trying to sell out stuff, and they were literally trying everything to sell it.
Yeah.
And so that was one thing. And also I remember like when I would see how it was outside the resort, I could see that there was a lot of poverty.
Mm.
Like I feel like people were struggling with like access to the water. Some of the infrastructure wasn't as developed. I remember wanting to go out to do something, but there was, of course, that fear. And I can definitely say that people in Punta Cana are very like flirty. They all try to like flirt with people. That's another
Oh,
thing. Yeah,
okay.
that's very like that's one thing that I had to be like aware of when I was there. But they do have really nice beaches. I would
Yeah.
say it's probably one of the best. I would say that was so nice. And we also got to meet people from, there were also, that's another interesting thing that I felt, is that there were actually locals taking vacations in the resort in Punta Cana. So they would come
Oh,
from like, let's say Santo Domingo, and
yeah.
take like a few days there. And we met an actual family from Santo Domingo, and they were like, yeah, we just want to take some rest, so we will stay. So we're staying here. And I don't know if it's because it's cheaper for them. I don't know if it's, I don't know, for whatever reason, but we met
Mm.
a couple of them from the actual, like from Dominican Republic, staying in some of the resorts. Because usually you see tourists, but we actually met people from Dominican Republic.
That's interesting that the locals are taking a break into the like resorts. That's I wonder what the reason is for that. Maybe it's just they can just like relax totally. Like I don't know. Maybe it's easier to get obviously the meals. They can chill out by a pool or the beach. There's no one really pestering them. I don't know. I'd be intrigued to
Yeah,
see why that was.
I I don't know. I don't know either. But yeah, and even another thing that I noticed is that, because I said before, like I can speak a little bit of Spanish, but their Spanish was also very different from the Spanish that I heard in Mexico. So
Ah,
it's like different. I could distinguish the difference. It was a slightly different. And another thing is that I've never seen how people from Dominican Republic look like, but they're not so different from how I look like. They have a very like dark tone skin. They have
mm-hmm.
dark hair, curly hair. So what happened is, because it's so hot and it's so humid, my hair would get just automatically like curly.
Yeah,
And of course, because of the sun, I would get suntan and stuff. Like I would get like a suntan, and then people would approach me and just speak to me in in Spanish, thinking that I was from Punta Cana.
yeah.
And they would actually ask me like, "Are you from here? Because you look like you're from one." And I could see that they're not so different from like some of them. They could actually look their Bengalis. That's the thing.
Oh
That's how
wow.
I felt. Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
interesting. And then as a side note, I think they've got a new low cost airline. It's called Arajet. I don't know if you heard about those
And there is
guys.
Sunwing as well.
Ah, yes, Samwing. Yeah.
Sunwing. Yeah.
Uh, a contact at Arajet keeps emailing me about the discount. So basically, for anyone in Canada, where
Mm,
you are, Montreal and Toronto, I think they're doing really cheap flights to the Dominican Republic. So I think it's
yeah,
a good option for people to have a break and not spend too much on the flight.
exactly.
Same time zone, I think, as well. That'd be handy.
Yeah, either it's the same time zone or it's an hour
Okay, at 1 hour.
behind or something. Because I know Mexico was an hour behind.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Next is Mexico. So you went
Hmm.
to there from Mexico. I mean, Mexico is a huge country. Where did you prioritize to go and see?
So in Mexico, I stayed in a resort, but I actually went outside.
Hmm.
I actually did visit a little bit outside. So basically I went to Cancun,
Oh
which
yeah,
is
yeah,
basically the main
yeah.
location where everyone goes.
Hmm.
And over there, the experience was amazing. Like the experience in the resort was the best, I would say. Like people, like Mexican people are just so welcoming and friendly
Hmm.
and warm. I love that. And the beach, of course, is really, really nice. When I went, they had an issue with seaweed. So at the beach you would have a lot of seaweed, so they will clean it in the morning, but the whole like service experience was great. And I also went outside of the resort twice. So the first time I went to Chichen Itza, which is one of their attractions. So we had like a tour guide, and he explained us like the whole story behind the whole history behind Chichen Itza, and it was just so hot and full of like tourists that they remember. Like it was unbelievable, but seeing it was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And when we took this tour, they also brought us to the Mayan villages, which I felt it was probably the best experience, because I saw how people live there like in the most authentic way. So we went to like those Mayan villages, and we had a meal there. So they eat a lot of rice with eggs and beans, and I think a little bit of vegetables. So it was different. It was interesting. And we also got to meet people from there, and they don't speak Spanish. They actually speak the Mayan language. So it's like different. It's like,
oh wow,
it's like not close to anything.
No, yeah, it must be like
it's like,
obviously pre-colonization, but like, yeah, it must be just years and years back.
Yeah, it's like close to nothing. And that was a very good experience, because they also look different from other Mexicans. I think they live just so far away from other places that their face are a little bit more like rounder. Even their body type, it's like rounder. They speak a different language, and they live in these like little villages. And even there, I feel like as soon as you move from the resort, you see a little bit like how people from there they live. So you still see a little bit of poverty, but I would say slightly better than Dominican Republic. And so depending on some areas that you go, you could see like some people living in just small houses with no access to anything, and then you have those that still have a little bit of like electricity, water, and stuff like that. And then I also went to Playa del Carmen, which wasn't so far from the resort. And even there, it was different. Definitely, there was a lot of tourists. So we went to like the main street that has a lot of stores, and they have these like international like clothing stores like H&M. I think there was H&M, and there was like Zara or something. So they had those main like stores, but it's very like touristy. So it's like safe. I felt it was pretty safe, but it was very like, it was like such a touristic area that, you could see a little bit about how people were living. You could see like a few Mexicans, you could see some tourists, and then there was like the beach where people were playing volleyball. And so I felt it was pretty good experience, but I would say my best experience was when I went to the Mayan villages and met people from there. It was like different and new for me.
Yeah, we had that similar experience that you mentioned about the language when I went to Peru. When they help you trek Inca Trail, they have porters and chefs and stuff that take all the stuff up with you. Those guys, not the guides, the guides are Spanish Peruvian, right. So that they speak Spanish and English. Porters and the chefs, they're Quechuan. So Quechuan language, again, is indigenous, I think, to Peru. I guess it goes back to the Inca days, a bit like the Mayan language that just is not close to anything. So we had to speak English to the guide, and the guide would then translate that into Quechuan. And I was thinking just how cool it would be just to learn a little bit of their language, just to interact with them, because they can't even interact that well with the guides because they don't speak that great Spanish. Maybe the chef did. I think the chef spoke Spanish, but the rest of them are quite shy, and just like it's like two languages removed, right? They can't really speak Spanish that well, and definitely not English. So that's quite an interesting experience. I thought if I do that again or something like that, I need to learn the actual local language so we can get just a few sentences together.
Yeah, definitely. Peru is on my bucket list. Like I saw when I visited one day. I keep watching a lot of documentaries about Peru, and I'm in love with how colorful their cuisine is and the different kinds of potatoes they have. I'm like, how? Like it's just so interesting, and their food is like fresh and flavorful.
Always
I really
fresh.
like that. Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't a big foodie back in those days, but I think now I'd appreciate it a bit more. But it is so fresh. Yes. And actually, Mexican food, how did you find that?
That's the thing about the resort, because they just make it so touristic that I feel like you can never experience the local food.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's the only issue. But I did appreciate the food that I had when I was at the Mayan village, because we had rice with beans and eggs, which was okay. I felt like it wasn't like it was still good. I still appreciate it because it was different. It was something new to me. So because when we were in the resort, we had tacos, but then I was like, this tastes the same as like having tacos in Montreal. So
Yeah, it's probably like Tex-Mex type stuff, right?
yeah. So
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think one of the key things is trying to get out to a market, isn't it, in Mexico, and have like a local market food or traditional
yeah,
food. It's
yeah.
got to be the dream. Okay, I want to just touch on Canada. Do you have any favorite spots as you live there?
Yes, in Canada, I went to Ottawa, I went to Quebec City, I went to Toronto. So I really like Quebec City because it has that very like European vibe.
Yeah,
And I
Old
feel
Town.
like Old Town, exactly. So I actually stayed, when I went to Quebec City, I stayed in downtown in Old Port in the Fairmont Hotel.
Oh, you stayed
And
there?
I
Yeah,
stayed there. Yeah, I stayed there. And so we were facing the water. I was like, okay, that's great. And
yeah.
I felt like it has changed through years and they made new things. Like you have a lot of restaurants, they have a lot of things to do. You can take a lot of walk in the old area of Quebec City. So it's really nice and it's very French Quebec City.
Yeah.
So I really like that. And I also like Toronto, but Toronto, it's more because I feel like it's very, very multicultural, Toronto. And when it comes to like finding restaurants, you have a bit more option compared to Montreal, and you have a little bit of more of like halal options, especially for people that are like Muslim and so forth, and who
Yeah.
might find it hard. I feel like you have Korean halal food, or that's the Chinese halal food, which is very good, and it's full of restaurants. And I like how it resembles a little bit of New York because I love New York, and this is what I like about Toronto, that it has that little bit of a little bit of like New York touch.
Yeah.
And of course, in like Toronto, you can do so many things. Like you can visit the downtown Toronto area. You can go to Niagara Falls. There is a lot of things to do, and I also like especially like here in Canada, I feel like you can do a lot of hikes.
Yeah.
And so there are so many places nearby where you can go for a hike. And I like going to Mont Tremblant, which is, I don't know if you've ever been, but it's basically like 2 hours away from Montreal. And it's like, so basically how it works is that during the winter, people go for skating, people go for snowboarding, people go for skiing. And it has like a village. It's like Mont Tremblant
Oh, yeah.
village. So where you
Okay.
have like stores, restaurants, and you can have a hot chocolate, you can take a walk, and you can go for skiing and stuff like that. And then during the winter, it's literally just restaurants. And then what you do is that you can go for a hike, like you can go on top of the mountain. So I really like that about Mont Tremblant. And then I feel like every season you can do something. So of course during winter activities, that's what you can do in Mont Tremblant. And during the summer you can do that. And then of course you can go for a hike. And I also like during the fall going for apple picking.
Oh,
And
okay. Yeah.
I feel there are places nearby where you can go to the farm and go for apple picking. And so it's an actual like whole new level of experience. So you go, you buy this bag of like apples. You basically buy the bag and then you go like around different trees, and each tree has a different kind of apple, and they explain you what kind of apple it is.
Oh,
Then you
wow.
pick it from the tree. And then once you're done with the apple picking, they have like coffee shop where you can sit down and have like locally produced food. So you have like apple tarts, you can have apple pie, anything based with apple, and that's like the nice experience about it. And then you have a little farm with actual animals like sheep or cows, or and that's another nice thing I would say.
Okay. And just very quickly before we get on to the stuff that you do professionally, what's next for your travels?
That's a good question. Like I just came back from Italy, and I went to
Oh, yeah.
Rome and Florence, and I went to Lisbon, and I'm like a bit homesick because I do consider Italy my home.
Oh, yeah.
So now in my mind, I'm like brainstorming idea. I'm like, where do I go? So there are a few places that I would like to visit. So one of them is, as I said, Peru. I would like to go to Brazil. I would like to go to Bali, and I would like to go to Maldives. And they all
Oh,
have like different reasons because
yeah.
Peru, of course, I think it's because of the cuisine, and I think the culture. That's the reason why I would like to go and see how it is. Bali, it's more for that. I feel like it's like country where you get so spiritual for some reason. Like that's how I associate it in my mind. And Maldives, I saw so many pictures about the beach, and apparently, like I think you have to go to the resort, or I don't know where, with the plane, because there is no land. I don't know. That's what I heard. I don't know if it's true.
Yeah.
And it has like sharks in the water. So
Yes.
yeah, so it's like different. So I would like to see it, and I heard it has like the most beautiful beaches as well. So I'm very curious about it.
It's a great four. Yeah. Very eclectic.
Yeah.
Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself. You work in leadership and finance, and you mentorship as well. You like empowering women, which is great. Can you tell us a little bit how you do that professional life?
Yeah, so I do work in finance. I do work in the financial sector, but then I do have some things that I do on my own as a hobby. So I have a blog where basically I try to empower women with the knowledge that I share, but I'm also part of two different organizations. One of them is called Women in Leadership, and it's an organization based in Canada. And every city has a chapter. And so what we do is that each chapter has a group of like people that run the organization. So I'm the social media lead, and what I do is that I handle the Instagram account of the organization. And what we do is we have Instagram lives, we post things about events that we do, and one of them that we just had was basically the Women in Leadership Day, which happened 2 months ago, where we had, and it was a networking opportunity for women to come together and learn from other speakers about their experience working in different industries. And we also have a program coming up in about a month, which is the Leadership Development Program, where women can sign up to this program and we help them to work on their leadership skills. Because the whole purpose of Women in Leadership is really to promote more women in leadership positions. And for 100 Women in Finance, which is another organization I mentor. So I mentored this young girl who wants to work in finance and who wants to study in finance. So I share my advice, my guidance, and sometimes she wants to know things related to like career in finance, like how can I find a job and things like that. So that's how I empower women.
And you're also a panel speaker as well.
Yes, I was invited for 100 Women in Finance to be part of this panel speaker, to share my experience along with other professionals in the industry about like what it was for me to find a job in finance, what it takes for me to stay in finance, what skills do I need to stay in finance. I shared that a couple of months ago when I was part of this event.
And how can someone maybe get in contact with you if they want you to become their mentor?
So here's the thing. It depends on like if they want to be part of the 100 Women in Finance, for instance, and they want to have me as a mentor. Usually how it works is that for students, it's free to sign up to this organization. So you sign up to the organization and then they have like a mentorship program where basically they have to complete a questionnaire and then they get matched with someone with the same interest.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
So that would be my advice to do it. There is also another organization called Femme Palette, where again they sign up and then again they have to complete a questionnaire and then they get matched with someone. So it's not necessary they can get direct contact with me unless we share the same interest and knowledge, basically.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. And finally, what kind of urged you to do not just your role professionally, like your job, but also do this extra stuff for women in your sector?
I think it was because I was just driven by my own personal experience, because I don't know if you know, but especially in the South Asian culture, there's a little bit of double standards and women are not seen the way I would want them to be seen. There is a little bit of inequality, I would say. Yeah. And because of that, I was like, this has to change. It has to change. There's this notion that, every single thing that you want to do as a woman, you cannot do it unless there is a male figure next to you, but we have to really, like, who says that? And so that's what I've been trying to do. This is what I would say made me start doing the things that I do now.
Okay. And you mentioned before you do blogs and stuff like that. Where do you post your blogs, like website or social media?
So my blog is called myways.ca. So that's my own blog where I post more like twice a month. And I also have a YouTube channel called Urmi Hossain. And the YouTube channel is more about interviews that I do with people that teaches languages. that
Okay.
teach languages.
Yeah.
Yeah, also interviews about people who work in finance, and then I also have my LinkedIn account, which is called Urmi Hossain, and usually have people connect with me if they want to have an advice from me or guidance, and I'm more than happy to share the knowledge. And of course, I have my book, which is available on Amazon, which is called Discovering Your Identity: A Rebirth from International Struggle. And I also have 2 ebooks on Amazon. One is about personal branding, and the second one is about the expression that you need to know if you're traveling to Italy for the first time.
Oh, wow. Okay. I need to
Yeah.
find those links and put them in the show notes. So 3
Yeah.
books, as in that's my next question is your books. So traveling to Italy for the first time. That's an interesting one.
Yes.
Is that quite an interesting one because you grew up there? You can imagine someone visiting there as a tourist and like, oh, you need to know these things, but your aspect is probably a bit different because you grew up there.
Yeah, so I never thought about creating one, but then I had a bunch of friends coming to me and be like, oh, I'm traveling to Italy. And they're like, oh, what is it that I need to know? So
Yeah.
because I had like 2, 3 people coming to me asking me the same question, I was like, oh, maybe that's something that I could work on. And so that's why I was like, let me just see if I can create a small booklet, easy, that people can use if they're going to Italy for the first time, that they
Yeah.
can like keep in hand and keep it handy and use it to communicate with people. Like simple things such as, how do you order food in a restaurant, or how do you ask for directions and stuff like that.
We're going to finish the episode with some quickfire travel questions. So these are like your favorite things that you've experienced whilst traveling.
Should I be nervous?
No, they're good fun questions. The first question is, hey, yeah, just a quick one. I just want to say there are many ways to support this podcast. You can buy me a coffee and help support the podcast with $5. Or you can go to my merch store with the affiliate link with TeePublic, where there's plenty of merch available to buy, such as t-shirts, jumpers, hoodies, and also some children's clothing. Thirdly, which is free, you can also rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, or Good Pods. Also, you can find me on social media on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. Simply just search for Winging It Travel Podcast, and you'll find me displaying all my social media content for traveling, podcast, and other stuff. Thank you. It's travel question time. 3 favorite countries that you traveled to, and you can't include countries that you lived in.
New York,
Mm-hmm.
Barcelona, and Switzerland.
Okay. 3 countries that you would like to travel to next in order. Anywhere in the world, if tomorrow you can go anywhere, what top 3 would it be?
Okay, so there is South Africa,
Yeah.
South Korea,
Yeah.
and Vietnam.
Okay. If you could pick one city in the world to drink a coffee and watch the world go by, where are you going to sit?
Rome.
Good place. And which country has the best coffee?
Italy, no? Hey,
Yeah.
hello.
Okay. 3 favorite international cuisines that you can't obviously include ones that you already eat. So that rules out Bengali, rules out Italian, because you grew up with them. So 3 other ones.
Oh man, that's so hard. Okay, so you made my life so hard right now. Definitely ramen. That's something that I really enjoy. Ramen. Yeah. I very much enjoy Afghani food.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'll probably say sushi.
Okay. They're 3 good ones. And what about a favorite beach?
You make my life so hard, honestly. So because I have only seen like few countries with beaches, I would just go for now with the beaches that I've seen in Cancun, which are very pretty.
Okay.
Very pretty.
What is your favorite landmark? Can be nature or man-made.
I very much like the Colosseum in Rome.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I have two.
Yeah,
the second one is the Duomo in Florence. I felt that's what aesthetically so pretty. The Duomo, it's like in downtown Florence. Yeah. It's just so pretty. The cathedral is so pretty.
Okay. If you could pick one country to live in for a year that you've not lived in before, where are you going to live?
I would probably say New York.
Oh, yeah.
I would say New York, but because that's coming from an Italian telling you this, and I think as Italian, we all grew up watching American movies, and we would watch a lot movies set in New York, and I think it's probably the dream of an Italian person to visit New York. And so when I have actually seen it, I was just so in love with it. It is actually like in the movies. And I know I kind of felt how it is the lifestyle in New York, which is a little bit chaotic and always moving. But I think it's like to try it for a year, it's good enough.
Okay. And 2 more questions. A favorite walk, trail, or hike that you've done?
I like the one in Montreal. There is a park called the Montreal Park, which brings you like on the top of the mountain. And once you reach the top of the mountain, there is a chalet. And from this chalet, you see the whole view of the city.
Oh, wow.
I love that one.
Yes. I'll have to check that one out. Okay.
It's pretty.
And lastly, if you could give a few sentences as to why someone should travel if they're not sure of how or why they should do it, what would you say to those guys?
I would say you travel to expand your knowledge and to enrich yourself. And experiences make you richer than you think.
Very efficient. I love that. Okay. Urmi, thanks for the chat. It's been a great chat. Thanks for coming to the podcast.
Thank you. I would just say to people, travel as much as you can. Eat as much as you can when you go to different places. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. So always try to adapt yourself to the local standards and to get the most experience out of it.
Awesome. Great words to finish on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to my Winging It Travel podcast episode today. You can find me on Instagram at James Hammond Travel or Winging It Travel Podcast. You can search for both. I release weekly clips of this podcast episode, as well as photos from the last 8 to 10 years of my travels. You can also follow me on TikTok, Facebook and Pinterest by searching Winging It Travel Podcast. I do release daily content to do with travel and the podcast throughout the week. Also check out my website, jameshammond.org. There's content about myself, my travels, and there's also a newsletter sign up as well as a contact form. Finally, please rate and review the podcast on Podchaser. This is my platform of choice. Alternatively, you can rate this on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts from. This really helps the podcast gain a bit of traction for the future in terms of guests and content. And I'm glad to see that you guys are listening out there, reviewing it and enjoying the content so far. Stay safe, stay humble, keep listening, keep traveling, and I'll catch you soon. Cheers, James.